Hey everyone. Welcome back to English with Justin, the podcast where we help you take your English to the next level. I'm your host, Justin, and today we've got a very exciting episode lined up. We're diving into one of the most important questions for English learners. How can you improve your English faster and more effectively? And to help us answer that, we have a special guest joining us today, brilliant teacher, all the way from California, Melissa.
Hi, Justin. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk about ways to boost your English skills.
It's great to have you here. We'll be sharing practical tips and real-life experiences, and breaking down exactly what you can do to become more confident in your English. So stick around. It's going to be a good one.
Thanks, Justin. It's great to be here. I've worked with students from all over the world, and I'm really passionate about helping them find fun and effective ways to improve their English skills.
That's awesome. So Melissa, let's jump right in. From your experience, what's one of the most common challenges that learners face when trying to improve their English? And how can they overcome it?
One big challenge I see is the fear of making mistakes. Learners often hold back because they don't want to get it wrong, but the truth is, mistakes are part of the learning process. Embracing that is key. Surround yourself with the language as much as possible, practice daily, and don't be afraid to speak, even if you're not perfect yet.
That's such a great point. Sometimes, just putting yourself out there is the hardest part, but it's also how you make real progress.
Exactly. And there are so many ways to practice, whether it's joining a language group, finding a conversation partner, or even just talking to yourself in English to get used to the flow of the language.
Totally. I tell my listeners all the time, don't underestimate the power of consistent practice. You don't have to be perfect. You just need to keep going. We'll dive more into those strategies in a bit, but first, let's talk about the mindset shift that learners need to really grow. What's your take on that? So yeah, mindset plays such a huge role in language learning. What do you think are some of the most important mental shifts English learners need to make?
I'd say the biggest shift is moving from perfectionism to progress. A lot of learners feel they need to speak perfectly right from the start, but that's not realistic. Language learning is messy, and it's okay to make mistakes. In fact, it's necessary. Shifting your mindset from I need to be perfect to I need to keep improving is a game changer.
I love that focus on progress over perfection. It takes a lot of pressure off, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And I always encourage my students to celebrate small wins. Maybe you understood a new phrase in a TV show or managed to order coffee in English without stumbling. Those moments matter. They show you're moving forward.
Yeah, it's so important to acknowledge those little victories. It's all about building momentum. What advice would you give to someone who feels stuck, like they've hit a plateau in their learning?
Great question. When you hit a plateau, it's usually because you've gotten comfortable with what you already know, and you're not challenging yourself anymore. So I recommend shaking things up. Try learning new vocabulary related to a topic you're unfamiliar with, or push yourself to engage in deeper conversations instead of sticking to the basics. It's all about stepping outside of that comfort zone.
That makes so much sense. Comfort zones can hold you back in any area of life, and language learning is no different. But stepping out of it can feel intimidating. What can learners do to make it a bit easier?
Start small. You don't have to dive into a 30-minute conversation right away. Try little things, like asking a follow-up question when you don't understand something, or even reading something more challenging. Bit by bit, you'll get used to it, and your confidence will grow.
I love how practical your advice is, Melissa. It's all about those small, intentional steps. Speaking of steps, let's talk about some specific tools or resources that learners can use to improve their English. What do you recommend?
There are so many great resources out there now. For one, podcasts like this one are fantastic because you can listen on the go and immerse yourself in natural conversation. Apps like Duolingo or Memrise are great for vocabulary, but I also recommend using resources like YouTube for listening to authentic content, whether it's interviews, tutorials, or even TV shows.
Definitely. YouTube has so much content for learners, and it's free. Do you have any tips for how to use YouTube effectively when learning English?
Yes. Don't just passively watch, engage with the material. Try repeating phrases, leave comments, and take note of new words or expressions. You can also slow down videos or turn on subtitles to make sure you're understanding everything.
That's really solid advice. It's easy to just watch a video and forget about it, but being an active learner is key. We'll talk more about some of these resources, but first, we're going to take a quick break. Stick around for more tips on how to improve your English right after this. Welcome back to English with Justin. I'm here with Melissa, an English teacher from California, and we're talking about how to improve your English. Before the break, we touched on the importance of stepping out of your comfort zone and using tools like YouTube and podcasts to learn. Now let's dive into some more tips and strategies. Melissa, you mentioned earlier that practicing regularly is key. But what about people who feel like they don't have enough time? What advice would you give to busy learners?
That's a common concern, but the great thing about language learning is that it can fit into your daily routine without needing hours of study. If you're busy, try microlearning, spending just 5 or 10 minutes a day practicing English. You can listen to an English podcast while commuting, or read an article during lunch. Consistency matters more than how long you spend at one time.
I love that. So instead of thinking, I need to set aside an hour, just grab those small moments throughout the day. Every bit adds up.
Exactly. And you'd be surprised at how much you can improve with just a few minutes here and there. For example, you could practice vocabulary using flashcards while waiting in line, or even write a short journal entry in English before bed.
That's such a good point. You don't need a huge block of time, you just need to keep at it. I also think people overlook how much they can learn from everyday conversations. How do you recommend learners take advantage of that?
Yes, conversations are a goldmine for learning. Even if you're not in an English-speaking country, you can still find opportunities. Try using language exchange apps where you can chat with native speakers, or if you have friends who speak English, ask them to practice with you. The more you actually use the language, the more comfortable you'll get.
Totally agree. And with apps like HelloTalk or Tandem, you can connect with people from around the world and practice speaking for free. But speaking of practice, what are your thoughts on pronunciation? That's something a lot of learners struggle with.
Pronunciation is tricky because it varies so much depending on your native language. But there are some great ways to improve it. One is shadowing, where you listen to native speakers and try to mimic them, copy their intonation, rhythm, and accent. Another is recording yourself speaking, then comparing it to native speech to see where you can improve.
Shadowing is a great technique. I think recording yourself can be a bit uncomfortable at first, but it really helps. What else can learners do to improve their pronunciation?
Practicing specific sounds that are difficult in English is a big one. For example, if th sounds are hard, spend time practicing just those. Also, focus on stress and intonation. English has a particular rhythm, and getting that right can make you sound much more natural. YouTube channels dedicated to pronunciation are great resources too.
Yeah, mastering those tricky sounds can really make a difference. Pronunciation is often the final hurdle for fluency, but with practice, it becomes easier. We've covered so much today, from improving your mindset to practical tools like shadowing, pronunciation tips, and fitting learning into a busy schedule.
It's been a great conversation. I really hope our listeners feel motivated to try out these strategies and remember that the key is to keep going, even if it's just a little every day.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Melissa, for sharing your insights. I think a lot of people are going to find this really helpful.
Thank you for having me, Justin. It was a pleasure.
All right, everyone, that wraps up today's episode. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, send us a message. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep practicing and stay curious. This has been English with Justin, helping you take your English to the next level. See you next time.